I want you to imagine waking up one ordinary morning, only to find that everything you know about safety and progress has been shattered in an instant. I am NJ from Freak Files. Today I'm taking you on a journey into the heart of a disaster that not only defied every expectation, but also left an indelible mark on human history. The Fukushima Daiichi disaster of 2011. In the next few minutes, I'll show you how a single day turned a state-of-the-art nuclear facility into a stage for a catastrophic chain reaction that would challenge even our wildest nightmares. This is not just another story about a nuclear incident. It's a tale of human ingenuity, the fine line between calculated risk and uncontrollable chaos, and a drama where nature and technology collided with devastating force. If you've ever wondered what happens when our greatest safeguards fail, stay with me. I promise you, the truth is far more extraordinary than any fiction. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, located approximately 220 kilometers north of Tokyo, straddles the quiet townships of Okuma and Futaba in Fukushima Prefecture. Picture a sprawling site covering about 3.5 kilometers, meticulously engineered to harness nuclear energy. Operated by Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, the facility was home to 6 boiling water reactors, built over a period of more than a decade. Unit 1 began operations in 1972, while Unit 6, representing the latest in design evolution, was commissioned in 1979. Each reactor, though built with the same general purpose in mind, carried its own nuances. The older BWR-3 design of Unit 1, the improved BWR-4 designs for Units 2 to 5, and the slightly different BWR-5 design of Unit 6. Now you might think that with such a wealth of knowledge and decades of experience, every possibility had been accounted for. Yet, the plant's layout, its intricate network of cooling systems, control rods, and backup power generators, was about to be put to the ultimate test. Before I dive into the chaos that unfolded, let's pause for a moment and explore the inner workings of these reactors. A boiling water reactor, BWR, uses demineralized light water for both cooling and moderation. Unlike other reactor types that use a separate secondary loop for steam generation, here the primary coolant is boiled directly to produce the steam that drives the turbines. This design, though efficient, places the heat generation process at the very core of the reactor's operation. Inside each reactor, fuel pins, bundled arrays containing uranium oxide pellets encased in zirconium alloy cladding, sustain the nuclear fission process. Control rods, inserted from below, regulate the reaction. Under normal conditions, a constant, controlled flow of steam is generated, turning turbines and producing electricity. But what happens when the extraordinary becomes ordinary? When the built-in safety mechanisms are overwhelmed by forces no one could predict? On March 11, 2011, Japan was struck by a 9.0 magnitude earthquake, the largest ever recorded in the country. I want you to feel that moment, the ground trembling violently beneath you, the air thick with uncertainty, as nature asserts its overwhelming might. In a flash, the sensors at Fukushima detected the seismic activity, triggering an automatic shutdown, a scram, in the operating reactors. In theory, this should have been the beginning of a safe and orderly cooldown. But in reality, the chain reaction was just starting. As the quake roared through the region, the off-site power grid lost its connection. The reactors, still generating decay heat even after shutdown, now relied solely on emergency diesel generators. For those few precious moments, it seemed as though human ingenuity might prevail against nature's fury. I know what you're thinking. Surely a plant designed to withstand earthquakes and tsunamis would have anticipated such an event. Yet, within 40 minutes of the seismic assault, a tidal wave began its relentless approach. Initially, a modest wave, just under 5 meters, slammed against a 10-meter seawall, testing its limits. But barely 10 minutes later, a monstrous 14-meter tsunami surged forward. Imagine water, not as a gentle flow, but as a towering wall of destruction that effortlessly cascaded over the seawall, flooding turbine rooms and inundating every critical component of the power plant. In a matter of moments, the backup systems that were supposed to secure the cooling of the reactor cores were overwhelmed. The seawater pumps, essential for transferring water to the condensers, were damaged beyond repair. The floodwaters sabotaged both the diesel generators and the DC battery systems that had been our last line of defense. For Units 1 to 5, this meant a total loss of both AC and DC power. The life support systems for nuclear cooling were gone. What followed next is a sequence of events so chilling it still haunts the minds of those who witnessed it. In Unit 1, without the proper circulation of coolant, the reactor core began to overheat. I want you to picture the scene. Alarms blaring, control panels flickering, and the operators, trained experts now facing an unprecedented crisis, scrambling to understand a situation that defied every simulation they'd ever run. They knew that if the fuel rods continued to heat without proper cooling, a meltdown was inevitable. In a desperate bid to manage the situation, operators attempted to vent the reactor's containment to relieve the pressure. At one point, an alternate cooling system was deployed using fire trucks, with crews pumping seawater directly into the reactor. But these makeshift solutions were racing against time. The very design of the reactor, which relied on a delicate balance of heat exchange between the primary and secondary loops, was being undone by an unstoppable force of nature. Meanwhile, Units 2 and 3 faced their own existential battles. In Unit 3, for example, operators struggled for over 45 minutes to open the necessary valves that would allow external water to cool the reactor. During that critical period, the reactor pressure soared beyond safe limits, effectively trapping the team in a deadly stalemate. I can almost hear your heart racing as you consider the implications. In those tense minutes, lives and an entire region's future hung in the balance. Then, the unthinkable happened. In Unit 1, an explosion ripped through the upper section of the reactor building. The force of the blast was enough to compromise the secondary containment, a building that was meant to be the last barrier against radioactive release. While the primary containment vessel remained intact, the structural damage to the reactor building signaled that the worst was yet to come. As if on cue, further explosions rocked the facility. Units 2 and 4 began to experience violent detonations in the early hours of March 15th, sending shockwaves not just through the plant, but through the psyche of everyone watching from afar. I want you to understand the psychological weight of these moments. It wasn't just about failing machinery or technical malfunctions. It was about the collapse of human control over a powerful, destructive force. Every explosion, every burst of radiation was a stark reminder that nature had reclaimed its dominance over technology. As the reactors faltered, the government was forced to expand the evacuation zones. Initially set at a 3-kilometer radius, the perimeter was soon extended first to 10 kilometers, and then to a staggering 20 kilometers. Imagine the scenes. Entire towns evacuated, families leaving behind homes and memories, and the ghostly silence of abandoned neighborhoods. At one point, radiation levels spiked to over 1,000 millisieverts per hour in some areas, a dose that left experts in shock and forced officials to reconsider every assumption about the disaster's progression. Yet amidst the chaos, human stories emerged that were as heartbreaking as they were heroic. More than 6,400 workers, ranging from TEPCO employees to contractors, braved the contaminated zones, risking their lives to monitor, repair, and mitigate the unfolding catastrophe. I want you to think about that courage. In the face of an invisible enemy, these men and women became the unsung heroes of Fukushima, battling not only radiation but also the crushing psychological weight of the crisis. The psychological scars, however, ran deeper than the physical ones. Families were torn apart, communities uprooted, and the trauma of sudden displacement has lingered for decades. Studies later revealed that the indirect toll of the disaster, stress, anxiety, and long-term mental health issues might well surpass the immediate casualties of radiation exposure. This wasn't just an industrial accident, it was a profound human tragedy. Even as the situation appeared to stabilize, the nightmare was far from over. By late March 2011, with emergency power slowly being restored to some units and cooling systems partially reactivated, the plant had managed to shift from an immediate meltdown to a long-term containment crisis. TEPCO's estimates suggested that roughly 1/10 of the radioactive release of Chernobyl had been emitted into the environment, a figure that still sent tremors through the global nuclear community. I'm sure you're wondering, how could something so meticulously planned descend into such chaos? The answer lies in a combination of factors, a cascade of design vulnerabilities, unexpected natural forces, and decisions made under extreme pressure. For instance, the decision to lower the reactor site's elevation from 35 meters to 25 meters was made to ease pump strain and provide a closer foundation to stable bedrock. That small change, meant to improve earthquake resistance, ended up leaving the plant perilously exposed to tsunami forces. It's a stark reminder that even the best-laid plans can falter when confronted with the unpredictable fury of nature. In the months and years that followed, remote-controlled robots were dispatched into the ruined reactor buildings to gather data and capture images of the melted cores. These machines, often immobilized by the searing levels of radiation, offered a glimpse into a world where human intervention was nearly impossible. The haunting images of melted fuel and charred reactor vessels became emblematic of the disaster, an enduring symbol of technological hubris and the high stakes of nuclear power. The cleanup and decommissioning process that followed has been nothing short of Herculean. The Japanese government, along with TEPCO, has invested billions of dollars and mobilized tens of thousands of workers to tackle the monumental task of decontamination. Over 600 million cubic feet of contaminated topsoil, vegetation, and debris were removed, only to be sealed away in countless black bags. Engineers even constructed a frozen wall around the reactor buildings in a desperate attempt to prevent further radioactive water from seeping into the groundwater and ultimately the ocean. Despite these efforts, the Fukushima site remains a toxic maze, a constant reminder that the disaster is not confined to a single day, but is a long, arduous process of recovery and containment. Every new measure, every technological innovation is a race against time to finally bring this nuclear nightmare to an end. I know you're probably sitting there thinking, how could something like this happen in our modern world? And I get it. I ask myself the same question every time I revisit the details of that fateful day. As I stand before you, I'm not just recounting facts. I'm sharing a story that has redefined what we thought possible in the realm of disaster. I want you to feel the tension, the fear, and the determination of every individual involved. This isn't just a distant event, it's a mirror reflecting the fragility of our own existence. Imagine being on the control room floor, watching as critical systems fail one by one, and knowing that every second counts. Imagine the gut-wrenching decisions, the uncertainty of whether the next action might save lives or hasten catastrophe. This is the reality that the Fukushima workers faced. A reality that challenges our understanding of control, fate, and the very limits of human resilience. Today, Fukushima stands as both a warning and a lesson. It reminds us that even the most advanced technology is at the mercy of natural forces beyond our command. The disaster forced a global rethinking of nuclear safety protocols, emergency response strategies, and even the way we view risk. Governments and industries around the world have since revisited their safety measures, inspired by the harsh lessons learned from Fukushima. But beyond the technical and political ramifications lies the human legacy of the disaster. A legacy of bravery, loss, and an enduring search for answers. The evacuated towns, the contaminated fields, and the countless stories of personal sacrifice all form part of an ongoing narrative. It's a narrative that challenges us to question, how do we balance our insatiable drive for progress with the unpredictable power of nature? I ask you to reflect on this. In a world where technology continues to push boundaries, are we truly prepared for the unforeseen? The Fukushima disaster is not simply a chapter in a history book. It is a living, breathing reminder of both our achievements and our limitations. As we wrap up this exploration into Fukushima, I want you to carry with you one thought. The fragile line between order and chaos can be crossed in an instant. The events of March 11, 2011 were not just a series of technical failures or natural calamities. They were a profound lesson on the unpredictable nature of life itself. I hope that by diving deep into this story, the technical details, the human emotions, and the relentless struggle for control, you've gained not only knowledge, but also a sense of awe at the resilience of those who stood in the face of such overwhelming odds. This is the kind of story that forces us to ask difficult questions about our future and the choices we make every day. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of the most unforgettable disasters of our time. As we continue to explore the world's hidden stories and unravel mysteries that defy explanation, remember, sometimes the most terrifying truths are the ones we least expect. And if you found this story as compelling as I did, stay tuned. There's always another chapter waiting to be uncovered. This is more than just a documentary. It's a conversation, a reminder, and a call to question the world around us. I'm grateful you took the time to watch, and I promise that as long as there are stories like Fukushima's, I'll be here to tell them. This is Freak Files, channel that bring dark history and horror story to life via documentary. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop questioning what lies beneath the surface.